It is time. Welcome to the Bituation Room podcast on a Frantastic Friday, the very first Frantastic Friday of 2025, and it's already a bad year. I mean, we knew it was going to be a bad year last year, but like it's extra bad. Cuz America is just being super America. I mean North America. I mean, just one country in North America. What is up, everybody? Thank you for being here live or in the future. This again is the Fantastic Friday show. This is a free show. But of course, I encourage you to support this show however you might. You could become a member on YouTube to get access to the Wednesday bonus episodes. You could become a patron at patreon.com/bituationroom and support me and my quest for freedom. No, it really does go a long way. There is a small but mighty team that helps me out. Not on Fridays, however. It's just me, myself, and I. Next Tuesday, we're going to have Jordan Ewell as well as comedian Will Weldon, who Will was on the first show of 2024. So I just figured we should have him back. And I'm really excited for this year in only one aspect, which is that I hope to book the most stellar guests, and you know that I try very hard to do that, but especially when it comes to what I think we're seeing, which is this, again, renewed attacks on immigrants, on trans people, on the unhoused, on women. And it's so clear that the left, progressives, normal people are losing the narrative and have been losing the narrative thanks to right-wing media, right? Thanks to disinformation, thanks to the amount of migrant crime, like the amount of insanity that is peddled by the right. And the only thing we can do is create a counter narrative, one that is based in truth, statistics, and also human rights. And so I really hope to be platforming both the organizers who are doing the concrete work, who are on the ground, who can who are offering on ramps to getting involved in actions, but also some of the professors and thinkers and analysts and people who are looking into the housing crisis, or looking into really sussing out all the BS that comes at us when we talk about immigration, right? Because we know Democrats aren't going to do that. We know mainstream news is not going to do that. So to me, I'm like, this is incumbent upon all of us, but for sure this show, in addition to comedians and friends and people who can make light of the news as much as it comes at us and as fast and furious as it does. So thank you so much for the people who've, decided to join the Frantifa officially, unofficially. If you're here, subscribe right now. I have one final hanging little thread from the Cenk Uygur debate or discussion that I wanted to pick up on because I missed it on New Year's Eve, which was my last stream. So stay tuned for that because it's a good one and has to do, if I don't say it now, I won't get to it because that's, as you guys know, that's how I roll. Franny forgets. Franny forgets. But again, thank you so much. I hope you are subscribing. And before we jump into every little thing, because I want to talk about, it's so gross to admit that by next week, we're all not going to be talking about like 2 terrorist attacks that happened, both of them by former service, current and one active, one former military. Like by next week, we'll be on to some other horror and 15 people who were murdered. It's like we'll just keep on going. We'll just, close down the border. You know what I'm saying? It'll be fine. So I wanted to just talk about that, because it has been a doozy of a first few days of 2025 and kind of a very auspicious little omen for what I think is going to happen under Trump, sadly. And then maybe get into we'll get into the media coverage around it, maybe get into a little bit of the Vivek and Elon Musk H-1B visa stuff, just because it's like there's something really fun. We may not have time And then, of course, I do want to talk about my one last disagreement around right-wing populism and what that really looks like and what that means. But before I do, everyone needs to remember this show has one sponsor only, and you bet your ass I definitely had a gummy before my interview with Cenk. Not that, I just needed to, sometimes you need to calm down. Sometimes you need to be like, woo. And it was great. Had my focus gummy with my cordyceps and my, obviously, CBD. You can put that out into the ether that Francesca was very high when she interviewed Cenk. No, Sunset Lake CBD, everybody. It is the company that, calms you down in a time of crisis. They have revamped some of their old gummies. So they're not old gummies, but they're Goodnight gummies, which now have 1 milligram of THC, and it's good. It works. I took some last night because we had whatever. It's a long story of some I thought there could be an intruder, and I went on Nextdoor and now I'm a Karen. No, I'm just kidding. I would never go on Nextdoor, but you know what I'm saying? I had a moment where I was like, oh my God. And so then I took my gummy. I was chill. SunsetLakeCBD.com, everybody. Coupon code FRANTIFA for 20% off your order. They are a vertically integrated regenerative farming CBD company based in Vermont. They're awesome. They donate a portion of the proceeds or of all their earnings, profits to great organizations like Planned Parenthood, prisoner release and bail funds and things like this. And they are once again on board with the Bituation Room for another year. So honestly, support them and support me. It is not easy to get any kind of sponsorship, especially when you are out here in the woods alone. Metaphorically. This is a completely independent show, and it's mostly me running it, which is why things don't run great. So that's, if you're like, why come? Yeah, it's me. It's mostly my fault. I understand. Just blame me and my desire for work-life balance / having a 2-year-old who's being the most just the most 2-year-old. But anyway, I'm hats off. Congratulations to Speaker Mike Johnson, again, whose name sounds like one of those TNC surf companies, you're reaching quorum with a Mike Johnson, or what were those? Remember that guy? A Big Johnson, Mike Johnson. There's something there. Someone should do the cartoon, except nobody's horny. Well, they're all really horny, but they're all really, closeted. It's a thing. We'll make it happen. It's a cute. If anyone was grew up drawing Stussy S's on their binders, holler at me. If not, you're right. I am old as hell and I don't know any TikTok lingo. But we have to point out that it's the first week of the year and we already on New Year's Eve and New Year's Day, or New Year's Eve, I guess, both incidents, a Cybertruck loaded with explosives blew up outside of Trump Tower in Las Vegas, the Trump Hotel. And immediately, of course, everyone was like, oh, okay, Cybertruck blows up. Pfft, yeah. And it's so funny because apparently Elon's very sensitive about that because it's very believable that a Cybertruck would burst into flames. Teslas have been recalled because they're doing that. And actually, we looked into, I think on this show, was that the rollout of the Cybertruck was so expedited. There were a lot of corners cut, namely the corners being literally, ironically, cut truly because of the way that shit looks and the fact that the doors are actually cutting people and lobbing off fingers. So anyway, but no, this obviously was an act of terrorism. It was definitely deliberate. And you might not hear that much about it from right-wing news outlets, mostly because, the guy might have been a Trump supporter. Awkward. Don't talk about it. Don't talk about it. That's so weird. And what could be the motive? I don't know. It is interesting that it's a few days after, Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy are saying they're going to go to war for visas for, tech workers so that they can continue to exploit foreign labor, but everyone else has to abide by restrictions. And, racist MAGA's all mad at that. And they're like, I thought you wanted the race war. So who knows? This is no hero. But his name is Matthew Livelsberger. And he was in the car. This is the other thing that my old brain did not really compute. I was like, yeah, can't you just drive that shit remotely? Like, I just thought you could just drive something like a Tesla remotely. Maybe maybe that's just the way, I interpret Teslas. Like, maybe it's because I believe the mayor of Atherton, California, was drunk and passed out in the front seat of his own car, I think like 3 or 4 years ago, in the front seat of his Tesla, and he's at the wheel past him. Atherton, California is one of the richest countries. It's one of the richest cities in the nation, okay? Silicon Valley area. And so the mayor is drunk, passed out in a Tesla, and the cops, in order to stop the Tesla, it was just driving on the highway. It was doing fine. The cops had to get in front of the car to slow it down and bring it to the side of the road. And if that's not the future we all hope for, I don't know what is. But so everyone's searching for a motive. Again, it was a New Year's Day. His full name is U.S. Army Master Sergeant Matthew Livelsberger. 37 years old, special operations soldier who was on leave from his base in Germany. After a day of examining the remains found inside the vehicle, the Clark County coroner confirmed Livelsberger was the driver. The coroner's office said Livelsberger sustained a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head, and a handgun was found at his feet, which is just like, it's so violent. I feel like me watching the first season of House of Dragon. Like, it's so violent. How could anyone? But like, truly, like, this is like, I think it is the patterns that I want to point out to are interesting, but mostly the pattern is violence, and don't like it, don't love it. It's incredible that this person had so many explosives, would have definitely died from the impact of the explosive, but he killed himself just to make sure, or in a more merciful way. I don't know. He had purchased 2 semi-automatic firearms legally on Monday, according to spokesperson for the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. 7 people suffered minor injuries when the truck, which was filled with explosive-style mortars and gas canisters, exploded at 8:40 a.m. Investigators believe the explosion was intentional, but hadn't determined a motive. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I'm just going to go out on a limb here. I'm pretty sure it was intentional. Who knows? Sometimes you fill a truck up with explosives, and then you're like, oopsies. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes you were just carting him from one place to another. I don't know. But yes, I'm pretty sure it was intentional. But again, I am no sheriff. No motive determined, although Cybertruck outside of Trump Hotel, I'm pretty sure he was mad at the woke. I'm pretty sure it's got to be something to do with the Democrats. It's probably a George Soros situation. As they continue their investigation in the blast, the profile of Livelsberger is emerging from the army and people who knew him. Livelsberger's wife, he had a fucking wife and apparently a newborn, told investigators her husband had been out of their Colorado Springs, Colorado residence since around Christmas after dispute over allegations of infidelity. An official who had been briefed on the investigation told ABC News, adding that she said her husband would not hurt anyone. Yeah, I don't know how to weigh in on this. He hurt himself. He hurt 7 people, but okay. Relative of Livelsberger, who did not want to be named, told ABC News he had been recently married, that Livelsberger had, and had just had a baby. Filings from the Franklin County Probate Court in Ohio showed that Matthew Allen Livelsberger and Sarah Elizabeth Wilson were issued a wedding license on December 3rd, 2012. A different member told ABC News that Livelsberger had since divorced and remarried. But to who? To this woman? Is there any way? I don't care. ABC News hadn't located divorce documents, blah, blah, blah. And Jennifer Ann Oh, shows a marriage application was filed in El Paso in July 2022. So this is the new wife, I guess, Jennifer Ann Davis. She did not immediately respond to a request for comments. So who's the wife? Is it this woman? Leivelsberger's wife told investigators her husband had been. I'm unclear on which wife or whether or not he had been divorced before he got married again. Calling Leivelsberger a patriot who loved his country, the aforementioned unnamed relative said he believed the incident in Las Vegas was possibly an accident. Come on now. Characterizing Leivelsberger as the, quote, last person in the world to do anything like this and the last person in the world to take his own life and to hurt anyone. I mean, I don't know. I don't know how to weigh. I don't know. If this person said he's the last person, is there like, do we start throwing down the flags? Are we doing some whistleblowing false flag Alex Jones, paper cutouts type situation? You know what I'm saying? Was it, speaking of House of Dragon, was it when, what's his name? First husband, who was gay, faked his own death and swam away to live his freedom and live his truth. Remember that? I mean, no spoilers, but really you should be watching. That was the first season. What are you doing? Probably less sexy than that. Apparently it was too early to speculate. Yeah, definitely don't speculate about the brown guy. Speculate about the Muslim first. Definitely speculate about the Muslim. But let the motive of the white guy kind of slide for a while. Let it, who knows? It's not lost on us at the front of the Trump building that is a Tesla. It's a Tesla vehicle, but we don't have any information at this point that's definitively telling us or suggests it was because of this particular ideology or any of the reasoning behind it. Maybe he just really sunk a lot into crypto or is the Dogecoin still real? A relative of Leivelsberger recalled that he had been a Trump supporter during his first term and recalls him saying that Trump was a soldier's best friend. Yee. Tesla CEO Elon Musk, a major Trump donor, has been advising the president-elect, has been assisting in the investigation. Oh, thanks. Thanks, my guy. Thank you. Or you're mostly mad that like news outlets are calling or like, well, I don't know. It could have just exploded by itself. It could have been an accident. Here's what happened according to Elon. What happened was this patriot wanted to, I can't quite do the accent very well, but he clearly wanted to celebrate Trump victory, and so he loaded, but he was going camping first. And he Cybertruck is a great he said he was going camping, and that's what he said. And the Cybertruck is a great vehicle to do that said camping. And so he put lots of fireworks because he was excited, and his plan was to light them in celebration. And it's very possible that he just lit them inside, and he was inside when it was like, no. But it is interesting though, like Elon wouldn't say this, so that act out is sort of really lost in the sauce at this point. But it would be interesting, because what if he was just going to celebrate, and then all the celebratory fireworks got exploded because the Cybertruck exploded? You know what I'm saying? There's a way we can spin this so it's not deliberate. It could be an accident. I don't know. Or it's another disgruntled Republican who's incredibly violent and is taking it out on Donald Trump, just like the attempted assassin, just like homeboy at the golf course who used to like Tulsi Gabbard, I guess. And just like this guy. Maybe all this real MAGA on MAGA crime should be thoroughly investigated. But no, please keep blaming the people who want to feed you delicious tamales and pupusas and pick your watermelons for you. Please, and raise your kids for you and clean your homes for you. Definitely keep blaming them, who, they are the enemy indeed. Leibelsberger received a number of commendations throughout his military career, including a Bronze Star with a V device for valor and 4 additional Bronze Stars. He also reported on his LinkedIn profile winning the Department of State Meritorious Honor Award in 2016. There is a picture of the picture of the back of the truck. Maybe he just wanted to, he just wanted to have a hatchback, you know what I'm saying? He just wanted here's the point. What is the point of a truck when it's not a fucking pickup truck? I never understood this. Why have a truck when you can't move a fucking couch with your truck? You know, he was like, I just wanted to give it, a bed. Leibelsberger told the truck's owner, because he rented this truck, that he was going camping at the Grand Canyon. And he used the app called Turo, car sharing app, to rent the truck. Investigators haven't found a link between the two, but that hasn't stopped incoming DHS Secretary Tom Homan from saying he definitely thinks they're linked, because, they should be, because the other one is easier to blame on so-called immigrants, even though it's not. And this one's a lot harder. This one's one of them kanunji-wunjies, and we don't know how to spin it. But let's go to the other attack and what we know. It's so fucking grim, y'all. It's so fucking grim. So the suspect, who's also was killed, and initially I'm like, can we try to take people alive? I understand he killed 15 people, but I kind of would like to know. But no, after he killed 15 people with his car in New Orleans on Bourbon Street, he got out and started shooting at the cops, and then he got shot, and that makes sense to me. So New Orleans attack suspect Shamsuddin Jabbar's divorce filings point to financial difficulties. Again, I'm just gonna point this out there. Just gonna put it out there. But one of the main indicators of violence can also be like domestic violence, of course, broader violence, domestic violence. It's very interesting that these people are sort of both mired in kind of their own interpersonal shit. But but the military makes alpha males, right? Alpha men who tell women to stay in their place, and if they won't stay in their place, well, they'll drug them. In Pete Heggs's case. So he had a checkered marital history. It looks like Marshall. I'm a little dyslexic. Punctuated by multiple divorces and financial difficulty. The records show that after his military service, Jabbar worked for 2 of the nation's largest professional service firms, Ernst & Young and Deloitte, as he claimed to grow his own fledgling real estate business. He had been identified by the FBI as a suspect in the attacks. 15 people were killed and over 24 injured as a rented Ford pickup truck was driving through a crowd on Bourbon Street at a high rate of speed early Wednesday. Jabbar, who police say was killed during the attack, was a 42-year-old U.S.-born citizen and, U.S. Army veteran from Texas. I never saw it coming. I thought it was just one of these young libs, out on the streets demonstrating against genocide. As of 2022, when employed by Deloitte, documents show Jabbar was making close to $125K, a salary which was chipped away by the court-ordered payments for his children from a past marriage and weighed down by credit card and mortgage debt. In 2012, in Harris County, ex-wife Nakadra Charlie Jabbar successfully sued him for child support payments for the couple's 2 girls, who were 8 and 3. 4 years later, in 2016, Jabbar filed for divorce from another wife, Tiara Simone Jabbar, in DeKalb County, Georgia. The complaint form filled out in handwriting said the 2 married in 2013, but separated less than 2.5 years later in 2016. Under grounds for divorce, Jabbar checked the box on the form that read, "Our marriage is irretrievably broken," adding that the pair can no longer live together. Okay, so this is all the background again on him. Jabbar withheld important information. So he was going through some shit, obviously. And again, I wonder, I'm not saying there was definitely domestic violence, but anyway, more about him and his turn apparently to ISIS, which this, I don't know. It is very interesting. It's like, oh, look, it's an ISIS flag right in the back. And that's convenient and that's fine. And probably he is like, a religious extremist. But anyway, he apparently had dreams that inspired him to join ISIS. Dude, I have crazy dreams. All right. And look, let me tell you, if I acted on all of my dreams, I mean, just home wrecker. You know what I'm saying? Home wrecker. Look out, Ryan Gosling. You know what I'm saying? Like it'd be over for Eva Mendes if I acted on my dreams. Just like things would happen. But I guess I don't know. Sometimes you get visited in the night, and you are told to join ISIS. The suspect proclaimed his support for ISIS and made chilling threats to kill his family in videos recorded ahead of the massacre. Can we get these videos ahead of time? Is it no? Okay. Christopher Raya, the FBI's deputy assistant director of counterterrorism, said that at a press conference Thursday, they're reviewing the disturbing videos of the suspect, 42-year-old Army veteran Shamsud Din Jabbar, where he discusses plans to kill his family in recordings made before the attack. New Year celebrations in the city ended in tragedy. Raya shared a timeline. He planted 2 IED devices in coolers along Bourbon Street. Raya said there was no definitive link between New Orleans attack and the Cybertruck blast. Raya said that he was 100% inspired by ISIS. Officials recovered weapons. Adding that Jabbar said in a video that he joined the terror group prior to the summer. Officials recovered weapons and potential explosive device inside the vehicle, as well as an ISIS flag, which the FBI is working to determine the subset. Like, where do you get an ISIS flag? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, is there someone on Etsy who's like still making them? Like, can you just Amazon Prime an ISIS flag? I'm not sure. Like, I'm not sure how that all works, you know? Spooky Ninja Chair, they say it was printed. Interesting. What does that even mean? Like silk screened? Or just like a shitty, like, computer printout? Of course, they're looking to see, like, ISIS is like throwback. You know what I'm saying? Sometime between New Year's Eve and the early hours of New Year's Day, he planted 2 IED devices. The barriers were just weak, apparently. He said they're reviewing footage where he claims to kill his family, proclaimed his support for ISIS. The footage was filmed at night while the suspect was driving from his home in Houston to New Orleans. Videos were timestamped at 1:29 a.m. and 3:02 a.m. In the footage, Jabbar explained how he originally planned to harm his friends and family, but worried the news headlines would not focus on, quote, the war between believers and disbelievers. I don't know. If you're on Bourbon Street on New Year's Eve, you are a believer. You know what I'm saying? Like, you are a true believer. You're like, I'm going to find parking. I'm going to keep my shoes on. I'm going to stay reasonably sober in order to be able to get home. I'm going to like spend the money to be out here. I might see some titties. Like, there's, you know what I'm saying? Like, let's just be honest. Like, I would consider anyone who's going to party on Bourbon Street a deep believer. I'm not sure that's what he meant here. His background was an Army veteran, and images have emerged of Jabbar in Army uniform. An Army spokesperson later confirmed that Jabbar served in the human resources and information technology roles. Hello, Vivek. Just kidding. In the Army from 2007 to 2015, during which he deployed to Afghanistan from February 2009 to January 2010. Wait, is that how bad the Afghanistan war went? Is that like even our vets got converted to ISIS? Because it feels like the vets kind of like they funneled out. It's like most of them neo-Nazis, right? Most of them neo-Nazi militant groups, Gen Sixers, and then like a few outlying, like, converts to Islam who took an extremist view of it, like a few ISIS-y ones. Just very like, where are the, you know what I'm saying? There's no middle ground anymore. Although I would argue again, they are basically the same, 2 sides of the same coin. He was an IT specialist in the Army Reserve from 2015 to 2020. His listed jobs were not in direct combat roles. He was honorably discharged from the Army after he was caught drunk driving on base, which honestly, under a Pete Hegseth, will not happen. Okay? You get caught drunk driving on base, you get a fucking promotion, dog. All right? You were able to successfully parallel park your vehicle while being drunk on Bailey's, schnapps, what? Handle of vodka. That's a promotion. They have a special badge for that or whatever. You get a medal of honor. I'm trying to think of a better word. In a resurfaced YouTube video posted in 2020, Jabbar said he was born and raised in Beaumont, Texas, and spent a decade working in the U.S. military before becoming a realtor in the Houston area. It seems like though he fell into financial hardship, as we sort of alluded to early on. So here's let's just go into what is the right saying? What's the right saying about this? What is what's their tack? Immediately Donald Trump was like, this is a foreigner who's come across the border. This is what's going on. Which is like, squeeze? What? What are you even talking about here, my guy? He was born in the US, he served in the military. There was a rumor, some X tweet that was like, the car was used to cross the border. No, it wasn't. It was not. But here's again incoming DHS Secretary Tom, I absolutely say the N-word in private, Homan. Like, this guy loves slurs. Like, I've never, like, when you see someone, you're like, you probably are normal. I've never seen a man who looks like he loves slurs. Like, this guy, like speaks in racial slurs when he's not on camera. You know what I'm saying? So here's Tom Homan, and this is beautiful. This is not only are they all blaming Biden for letting criminals across the border, which have nothing to do with the military or any of these attacks, excuse me. But he's listened for who he blames specifically and who he associates this with.
National security and groups like us been emboldened. Protesters walking down the streets of New York City carrying terrorist flags, chanting death to Israel and death to the United States, and nothing's being done about it. A border that was secure under President Trump and this administration unsecured it on purpose. It's an open invitation for those around the world that hate this country.
Oh, nice, Fox News. So I don't know if you caught that, but he was basically like, it's an open invitation. And with all of these protesters walking around New York City with terrorist flags, excuse me? What? Oh, so we're already blaming anti-genocide protesters. It's beautiful how this works. And in case you thought that was just a right-wing little exercise, here is the New York Times, as Ken Klippenstein's pointing out, just within hours of this attack, who framing it in the context of, again, Gaza. Officials trying to determine if New Orleans suspect had ties to terrorist groups. U.S. officials have warned that the conflict in Gaza and Lebanon could spill into the United States, most likely in the form of small radicalized groups acting on their own initiative or lone wolf terrorists. Nobody was talking about Gaza. Nobody was talking about Gaza. You're talking about Gaza. Nobody's talking about Gaza. ISIS, for whatever they think, they didn't come out of the genocide. They didn't come out of the last year. I'm assuming they are, whatever. They don't like Israel much. But you see how we're lumping? You see what we're doing here? What's so funny about this? What is so fucking funny about this is it's like, ooh, how can we reverse engineer the formation of ISIS not to be, related to the sectarianism in Iraq or Afghanistan or Syria, and all the ways that the U.S. military basically laid the groundwork to create ISIS by funneling more and more money into like Wahhabist, Islamist, whatever, like Sunni militants. I'm forgetting my little clans here, but you know what I'm saying? Like, was the US. And then, of course, the Syrian civil war and all of that. Like, what are we trying to do? We're like, oh yeah, it was ISIS was formed by a Columbia student who barricaded themselves in a. This is disgusting. Like, Tom Homan, you're like, I get that, but this is fucking disgusting. The fact that the New York Times is doing this. Here is, I believe, Representative Mike Waltz of Florida using the attack in New Orleans as a pretext to say, see, this is why we've got to confirm every single one of Trump appointees. Like, now we should just like move up the inauguration. Biden's basically dead. Move up the inauguration. Let's get him in office now. So it's not just a pretext to go real hard on the border, go real hard, obviously, on Muslims and Arabs and peace protesters, but also this is why we need Pete Hegseth.
This is why getting President Trump's cabinet in is so important. We need Governor Noam at DHS. We need Kash Patel at FBI. We need Pete Hegseth at DOD. This is an across the government look. Marco Rubio at State, and of course, Ratcliffe at CIA and Gabbard, Tulsi Gabbard at DNI. That has to be in place day one, guys,
Tulsi.
because this is a moment in transition of vulnerability, and President Trump is going to project because he is a leader of strength. The narrative that we project on day one will be just important, and that's having our people in place.
And lastly,
this is amazing. That we have to have our people in place. We cannot show weakness. I mean, I think the sooner we get drunk ass Pete Hegseth in charge of the DOD, the sooner we will stop with the violent, drunk, domestic abusers that litter the U.S. military. Like the extremists that are coming from where? Across the border? No, they're coming from army bases. That's what's happening. In fact, that's what's been happening for many, 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 many years. The Intercept has an article because of course they fucking do. And I'm so glad that they still do, some really good reporting. U.S. military service is the strongest predictor of carrying out extremist violence. And again, this is not we've been knowing this. There have been signs, of course, that anti-government extremists are often former military. They are, right? And I wonder who taught them how to be so violent. Maybe we could move some of this money, fuck just the police, defund the Pentagon, defund the U.S. military. We don't need all that. It's not keeping us safer. Does this feel safe? We've got veterans who are falling on hard times because, of course, this country would never let a veteran slip. So this is Nick Terses in The Intercept. Both, again, he talks about both had U.S. military backgrounds. From 1990 to 2010, about 7 persons per year with U.S. military backgrounds committed extremist crimes. Since 2011, that number has jumped to almost 45%, 45 per year, according to the data from a new unreleased report shared with The Intercept by Michael Jensen. Michael Jensen's the shit, guys. He's the GOAT. He, I think, is former FBI. And Michael Jensen, especially following January 6th, I did a Newsbrook video about Michael Jensen. If you can get your hands on any interviews, in fact, maybe I can get him on the show. He is one of the only voices nationwide who is like, we have a clear problem between law enforcement, military, and anti-government extremism and acts of violence and terrorism, of homegrown terrorism, as we finally were able to utter. Remember when it was just ISIS? And then in the last, 4 or 5 years, and of course on Jan 6, everyone's like, yeah, homegrown terrorism. Say it with me. Homegrown terrorism. Say it with me. We're like, Maybe all the wars we do abroad are coming home to roost. Maybe all the PTSD, maybe all of the hate and the violence and the unchecked sexual assault in the military and, the drinking and the drugs and the substance abuse, maybe all that's kind of coming home to our communities. In addition to the weaponry's here. All the companies that sold the US military, all of their either lethal or non-lethal, but specifically non-lethal crowd control tactics or, like even the fucking tanks. Where do you think they all went after the Iraq war was over? Where do you think they all went? They all came here. They came to the police departments. That's where they sold their weaponry. That's where they sold their non-lethal crowd control, weapons. Need I say more? We've talked about this, but Michael Jensen is great. Research director at the National Consortium for the Study of Terrorism and Responses to Terrorism, or START, at the University of Maryland. Military service is also the single strongest individual predictor of becoming a mass casualty offender, far outpacing mental health issues, according to a separate study of extremist mass casualty violence by those researchers. From 1990 to 2023, 730 individuals with U.S. military backgrounds committed criminal acts that were motivated by their political, economic, social, or religious goals, according to data from the new START report. From 1990 to 2022, successful violent plots that included perpetrators with a connection to the U.S. military resulted in 314 deaths and 1,978 injuries, significant number of which came from obviously the 95 bombing of the Murrah Federal Building in Oklahoma City. In the latest attacks, the FBI identified 42-year-old Shamsuddin Jabbar as a man who rammed the pickup truck into New Year's revelers on Bourbon Street. The U.S. Army said Jabbar served as a human resource specialist, information technology specialist. His service included deployment to Afghanistan from February 2009 to January 2010. Staff sergeant at the end of his service said Jabbar was inspired by the Islamic State organization, according to a short address by President Joe Biden on Wednesday night, who added that in videos posted to social media, he had indicated he had a desire to kill. The FBI said it did not believe he was solely responsible for the attack and said the investigation was live. What? What is this? He wasn't solely responsible. So even with him and his rented car, there was more. What might they mean? Do they know something they're not telling us? Is this another one of their well-laid plans to radicalize a random person, give them all the things they need, then try to entrap them before they kill? Probably not. I'm just asking questions. Because that's really, what Michael Jensen has blown the whistle on is the fact that the FBI really goes about rooting out extremism through the most ham-fisted, dangerous ways, which really is entrapping people, whether they be from right-wing militias to Islamic terrorists, sympathizers. Like, it's the same thing. They infiltrate, they do, what are they called? They're just entrapment scandals and schemes is exactly what they are. So every time they foil a plot, it's effectively the same. They prove their own worth, right? By saying, hey, we foiled this plot about ISIS. Never you mind, we were the ones who radicalized this person and we got them to love ISIS, but we did foil the plot, so keep giving us money and we're doing a great job. And there's terrorism still abound and you should still be very scared. And that was the same thing. And we had, God, I'm forgetting her name. We had a guest on, I believe a year ago or 2 years ago. We were talking about, I will find her name. I promise you, girl, I promise you. We were talking about entrapment from the FBI does for right wingers, right? Because when I believe Christopher Wray of the FBI released this report that homegrown terrorism is the biggest threat, more so than, Islamic fundamentalism or whatever, extremism. The FBI was like, oh, okay, cool. We'll just do the same tactics that we did for the Muslim community and we'll apply them to the anti-government extremists. And they were in part responsible for the attack or the plan, to kidnap Governor Gretchen Whitmer. If you guys remember that, right? Well, what we didn't remember is that 2 of the people involved in that were FBI informants. And There were also FBI informants in fucking Jan 6. Of course, the right is like, there were FBI informants. Jan 6 was an FBI plot. It's like, no, man. Jan 6 was not an FBI plot, okay? There were open Republicans saying we all need to go to Jan 6. You know, the fact that there were multiple FBI informants just shows you the kind of people who were at Jan 6, which people who they already had cases after them. They were already being marked by the FBI, and they were turned informants because they were trapped basically by the FBI. They were like, all right, we know you're participating in all kinds of things. You guys are violent. You have a history of violence, like Enrique Tarrio of the Proud Boys, right? And the right's using that as a way to say that Gen 6 was a FBI plus. Like, man, no. But the Gretchen Whitmer thing was in part an FBI sting operation. So that's something to note. If only we had a better FBI/no FBI, maybe these rumors wouldn't be so abound. And I know, we do need security. We do need some sort of, I'm not saying no FBI, but I'm saying like defund. I'm in the business. Defund, remake, replace, better people all around. Authorities are also investigating whether a terrorist attack in New Orleans is linked to the Cybertruck explosion in Vegas. So they go into okay. In the years 1990 to 2022, 170 individuals with U.S. military backgrounds plotted 144 individual mass casualty terrorist attacks in the United States, according to START research using the Profiles of Individual Radicalization in the United States, or PIRIS, not to be confused with PRIUS database. That is a database of all of those of us who want good mileage and to feel better about ourselves vis-a-vis the planet, okay? But also like a reliable Toyota, because they are good cars, all right? So the PIRIS, Profiles of Individual Radicalization in the United States, the PRIUS database, soft-ass libs like myself, okay? Shout out to all the Prius owners, which includes information on more than 3,000 subjects who committed extremist crimes in America. These troops and veterans represent approximately 1/4 of all individuals who plotted mass casualty extremist attacks in this span. 1/4, outstripping their representation in the U.S. population. Wouldn't you think? Okay, so we could probably find the stats, although the right isn't interested in stats. And if they were, they wouldn't care about this one because it probably wouldn't show them anything. But then how many, other than 9/11, but how many mass extremist crimes or mass extremist attacks have been plotted by foreigners, undocumented migrants, people, asylum seekers? How many asylum seekers? More particularly, let's go with asylum seekers, because that's the most, obviously, the most loathsome people who, don't want to be murdered in their home countries. Very dangerous. They're the murderers. They're running from themselves. It's insane how it works. How many asylum seekers do you think have been plotting mass casualty? I know usually when I want to seek safety in a new place, I usually, as a peace offering, bring a bomb. You know what I'm saying? It's just kind of how it works. I'd really like to stay here. That's why I'm going to blow myself a home in the ground. I'm making no sense. You're making no sense. Jensen and his colleagues found that while military personnel and veterans are not more likely to radicalize to the point of violence than members of the general public, when service members and veterans do become radicalized, they may be more likely to plan for or commit mass casualty crimes, thus having an outsized impact on public safety. Interesting. So when they do, it's big and bad. Researchers also determined that subjects in the PIRIS with U.S. military backgrounds are 2.41 times more likely. So 2.5 times as likely to be classified as mass casualty offenders than individuals who did not serve in the armed forces. This means that the U.S. military service is more reliable predictor for becoming a mass casualty offender than mental health issues, being a lone offender, or having pre-radicalization criminal history. Most mass casualty offenders with the U.S. military backgrounds and purists were associated with far-right domestic extremist groups, so almost 75%. Approximately 15% or 24 offenders were inspired by or connected to foreign Islamist extremist organizations such as Al-Qaeda and its affiliates, 9 subjects, or Islamic State or ISIS, 13 subjects. So that's freaking important, y'all. Here is expert on clinical and forensic psychologist, expert on violence, excuse me. The Army is a vast organization with all kinds of different people and all kinds of different training and experiences, who cautioned against drawing any early conclusions about the relationship between the attacks and the attackers' military service records. He said data on the relationship between military service and mass casualty attacks should only be used for beneficial purposes, like smoothing the transition from military to civilian life. Okay, my guy, but like this is not, first of all, I would never say like, that's why you got to lock them up. That's why you got to, no, that's why you have to make sure that mental health services are available. But I think more broadly, and this is sort of why we're like, you have to think about this institutionally. When we're about to confirm Pete Hegseth, let's put aside the drunkenness, let's put aside the rapiness, the fact that he's like, yeah, death to Islam, like we need to kill all Muslims, this is great. Like, you don't think we have a cultural problem? And the right is basically going to use this to be like, this is why we can't allow brown people into the military. It's all about DEI. Too many women, too many brown people. They can be turned too easily. We need solid, strong, white extremists. You know what I mean? Christian nationalist extremists. That's who we need. But like, it might have something to do with the amount of Islamophobia, the amount of hatred. I mean, shit, even just serving in Afghanistan and seeing the futility of your own of that war and how much you or Iraq and seeing how much you are creating more extremism, to the point where who knows, maybe some people do sympathize with ISIS. Maybe it's our foreign policy. Maybe it's the institution. Maybe it's the fact that in basic training, people cannot contact their loved ones or outsiders or family, almost like a cult. They get punished every time they receive a piece of mail. You guys know that if you've been through basic training or know someone who did. And that the chants that they sing are like, what makes the grass grow? Blood, blood, blood. And they do target practice on Osama bin Laden's face. It could have something to do with all of that. Let's take a break to just shout out some super chats. Joel Lizaya Lecchio. Happy New Year to you and your family. You're much appreciated. You're much appreciated. Thank you so much. Wayne, Wasabi Dragon, wishing you and your family a safe and wonderful new year. Great luck coming your way. So says Wasabi Dragon. Wow. That feels like a fortune cookie. Like Wasabi Dragon. No, wasabi is not Chinese. There's no fortune cookie. Is there? What's the racist? Thank you so much. Robert, thank you for your super chat. Malfunctioning security bollards were removed from Bourbon Street before the truck attack. They didn't work. Apparently, the eyewitnesses say that there were like just those metal police barricades, which are if you're running full speed in a truck or you're, going full speed, you can break through pretty easily. Yeah, definitely concrete barriers would be the way to do it. And I support police in this case, making sure that everyone can drink calmly and without death and things like this. Sarah, thank you so much for your super chat. Thank you, Charlie Demir, for becoming a new member. You get access to a bunch of bonus episodes. Next Wednesday, we're going to have a bonus episode. Anti-corporate corporatist. That'd be funny. The anti-corporatist. Happy New Year and early Gong Hei Fa Choi. You spelled it. That's actually kind of how you spell it. Thank you so much for 10 gifted. Oh no, membership for 10. Oh, I thought you gifted 10 memberships. My bad. Thank you, Ty. You can still do that. You can gift one. It doesn't matter. Guys, tale as old as time. We have a cultural problem in the military, and it's not people of color or women. But anyway, here's what I wanted to go over with y'all. We're so fucked. I'm sorry. Just to put a button on that whole story, I realize like half of what I just did was completely ironic, but like sincerely, I'm scared, and sincerely, we cannot think that the militarism that we wage abroad, or the money for wars abroad, or money for genocide abroad, and the amount of death, and the amount of suffering, and the amount of like maimed children, that doesn't impact us as a culture, that doesn't impact us as a society, that doesn't impact. I mean, I've known amazing vets. I mean, the other thing I want to just make clear, like, there are people who watching who are vets, there are people who are supporters who are vets. I have been a huge supporter of amazing veterans who are anti-war, who were sold, a pack of lies after 9/11 and deployed to Afghanistan, deployed to Iraq, and came home and couldn't sleep without seeing the images of children suffering in Iraq. They had to, like, drink themselves to sleep, basically. That is the reality of being a vet. So again, this is not to dehumanize veterans. I think that's really important. It is to say, it's to honor them. It's to not send them into bullshit wars. It's to teach them, and have training be just as, I mean, it's very funny to be like, gee, we need mental health services outside of the military. But while you're in the military, you're mostly a killing machine, and you mostly just see people as pawns, and you're going to just drone operate, or you're going to do an IT specialist as, we use AI to, murder villages. Like, that's just going to be your job. And then you get out of the military and like, gee, I wonder what's wrong with their mental health. No, man. They're reacting probably pretty naturally to a culture that you're inculcating them with. So, I think veterans have a huge role to play in the future, a progressive future for this country, and remaking the U.S. military, if I'm being honest. Here's the big problem I have. So, on last Friday, God, it's been only a week, Cenk came on my show, and we obviously had a big debate, and we talked about right-wing populism and left-wing populism. And there was a moment where I, asked, I was like, well, who is a right-wing populist? Like, who do you like in office? He said Vinny from PBD, and I was like, Vinny eats paint chips, and he didn't disagree. I said Vinny also believes that like the Baltimore bridge collapse was an inside job and things like that. But he was like, Cenk was sort of like really sort of cagey about who he thought was a right-wing populist. And then he finally said Josh Hawley. And I didn't want to push back at the time, but it's important to look at like why Josh Hawley might be like good on some issues, and why he's definitely a bad person, why he is scary and not the answer, beyond his like, men need to not touch themselves and we need more role models, and I'm certainly not in the club. Like, he just has closeted vibes. And I don't, again, not to draw too much of a conclusion, not all anti-gay Republicans are themselves closeted, but a good amount of them, but so he was saying, that like, Josh Hawley had sworn off corporate PAC money. And what's funny is that Open Secrets did a story about this about 3 years ago, 2021. And in fact, Ted Cruz also said that he renounced corporate PAC contributions. But you know why? It's because they were woke. That's why. Remember, in the wake of the George Floyd uprising, remember in the wake of like, oh my God, what are all these corporations doing? I mean, don't worry, they've all rescinded their inclusivity or DEI programs. It's all gone. But these senators were like, I'm not going to take any more money from corporations because corporations are woke. Exactly. The tipping point for Cruz and Hawley, came when big businesses, including Coca-Cola, Delta Airlines, and Major League Baseball, announced a GOP-backed law in Georgia that critics will say make it harder for Georgians, especially people of color, to vote. In an op-ed published by the Wall Street Journal under the title, "Your Woke Money is No Good Here," Cruz announced that he will no longer accept campaign support from corporate PACs. So let me get this straight. Coca-Cola, it's not even anything George Floyd related. Coca-Cola, Delta, and MLB were like, hey, don't pass, laws that make it harder for people to vote, especially people of color. It feels like, just like Jim Crow poll tax situation. Okay, could you not do that? And so that's when Cruz was like, absolutely not. You're woke. For far too long, woke CEOs have been fair weather friends to the Republican Party. They like us until the left's digital pitchforks come out. Dude, digital pitchforks. Who does that sound like? Who does that sound like? Right answers only. Who does that sound like? Digital pitchforks. Left's digital pitchforks. I feel like I've heard that pretty recently. Hawley followed Cruz's lead the next day, tweeting that corporations, quote, ship our jobs to China, mock middle America's way of life, try to control our speech, and run our lives. The two senators are also advocating for retaliatory policies to hit back at businesses that criticize GOP-backed policies. It's time we stood up to them. I won't take corporate PAC donations, and I'll fight to break up their monopoly power. Okay, but so this is really important, actually, to see the why, right? It is all fucking fake, right? It is them being pissed. And here's the original tweet. It's them being... It's them using this. So Ted Cruz, starting today, I'll no longer accept money from any corporate PAC. I urge my GOP colleagues to do the same. For too long, Republicans have allowed the left and their big business allies to attack our values and ship our jobs overseas with no response, no more. Okay, first of all, let's be real. Just because neoliberal has liberal in the title does not mean that Republicans are not neoliberals. Every Republican is a neoliberal. Remember this. Every Republican is a neoliberal. In fact, do you remember the Obama years? Some of you may not. The one issue that Republicans backed Obama on in his last year in office was the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which was a free trade agreement. So miss me and fuck you with the GOP being like, we're against free trade. No, they've been for free trade. And I understand Hawley's trying to change his tune and whatnot, but it's such bullshit to say that they are anti-corporatists. No, they give tax breaks to the corporations. And at this point, we are in a moment of just which industry head is going to lead, right? It's not, again, the class war has been won. They've won. The rich have won. The 1% have won. It's just who's going to be the person in the room, who's going to get the no-bid government contracts, who's going to be the one making money from all of this. So it sounds like he's saying they ship our jobs to China. That's okay. Yes, but there's also fuck tons of xenophobia in there, right? That's what they want you to think. Mock middle America's way of life. What does that even mean? Corporations are middle America. You're mad at Coca-Cola because you don't think they're middle America. You're mad at Coors or what is it, Budweiser, because they're not middle America because they gave money to a massive influencer who happened to be trans. You're mad? Corporations are supposedly middle America, right? Try to control our speech and run our again. What are you talking? They definitely run our lives, but they're not saying, I'm going to stand up for unions. No, it's all because they think they're woke. That's the angle here. Meanwhile, Josh Hawley's paid some lip service, and this was back in 2023 during the UAW strike. He joined the strike actually on the picket line. So again, he's doing the right things. But Prem Tucker back in September of 2023 showed that Hawley received campaign donations from General Motors and Ford. It's all fucking performative. And you could argue that it's performative for Biden as well. But Biden actually put some bark behind the bite. You know what I'm saying? Biden actually wasn't just performative when it came to labor rights. You know, the NLRB, perfect example. The FTC, which has everything to do with corporate control, another perfect example. Lena Khan has now been axed. Goodbye. No more breaking up Google or suing Google. No more suing of Ticketmaster. More gouging, more gouging. Hawley appeared at a General Motors plant in Missouri earlier this week to join members of the UAW. There, he called himself pro-worker, challenged the companies to give workers a pay raise and more time off. While he's rallying against the big three now, he's previously received campaign contributions from automakers. During his first run in 2018 through 2020, he received $8,500 from GM's PAC. His Senate campaign received $3,500 from Ford's PAC and another $1,000 from GM executive. So, asked about his donations, a spokesperson for Hawley said that he promised to no longer accept money from corporate PAC. So he's changed his tune, guys. Maybe he's a different man. Let's keep digging into Josh Hawley. Maybe he's a different man on all this. Give me like literally 2 seconds. Talk amongst yourselves. Talk amongst yourselves. Franny forgot to pull up this article that she saved. Here we go. Okay. So has he been bought? Has he been bought by corporations? Maybe not. Maybe he's sworn off that corporate campaign finance. But Open Secrets does keep a tally. And they look, and let's see what kind of bedfellows we've got for his Fighting for Missouri PAC. So the Senate Conservatives Fund, which I don't know much about, is a pretty big one. I should do a little bit more digging on who the hell these guys are. Senate Conservatives Fund, almost $200,000. Diamond Pet Foods. I mean, you're owned by Big Kibble. That's Big Kibble right there. Ooh, number 3 contributor, American Israel Public Affairs Committee, otherwise known as AIPAC. I've heard of them. Now here's the thing. You could be like, well, at least it's not Coca-Cola or Delta. But AIPAC, one of the top recipients of AIPAC money, although I'm not saying he's the top, but like someone who's like one of their main contributors is AIPAC, not really going to be a good ally. So again, I'm not saying that I'm not saying that people's fake populism can't be wielded to actually get stuff done. I agree that it can get done. And in fact, I think Bernie Sanders introduced some legislation today, or he says he's going to introduce legislation to cap like credit card fees. And I think Josh Hawley's joining him on that. That's good. But also Bernie Sanders is in office. Bernie Sanders has the ability to make change. You know, our job in the media is to change narratives, and it's definitely to win these discussions and these fights. And Josh Hawley, meanwhile, and again, that's all like just like economic stuff. But then he's just penning psychotic op-eds. This is from last September. The Christian nationalism we need. Like, do you know what I'm saying? You know, like this is like the crazy stuff. That he's openly embracing Christian nationalism. So some of it's kind of interesting. He's basically kind of trying to mix his Christian nationalism with like an anti-corporate message. But I don't know. I don't know if this is the person I want to like work with. Do you know what I'm saying? I don't know if this is the person that I want to platform. I sure as shit don't think this is the person who's going to help protect people I care about, right? Women's rights, abortion rights, people who, this is not a cultural issue. This is a physical health issue for trans people, women, trans people, people of color, Black Americans, the wokes, you know, like it's fine. You do a little bit of digging And he is scarier than, and like less savory than I think Cenk would like to believe. Anyway, guys, it has been a lovely little Friday afternoon with y'all. On Tuesday, I do want to talk about Vivek Ramaswamy idolizing Screech from Saved by the Bell. Let's all agree that Screech was a fucking stalker, okay? Anyway, we'll talk about that. Apparently, it's the fact that we all watched Saved by the Bell and we liked AC Slater, because who doesn't? That has led to mediocrity in America. So I'm excited to see which TV shows my guests have watched that have contributed to their own mediocrity. That's why I don't really, you know what I'm saying? That's why I don't watch TV that much. That's why I am I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a billionaire. That's why I'm a billionaire. Patreon.com/bitchuationroom. Thank you so much for your support in advance. Tuesday is the fart song, and all the thank yous to all the patrons at $10 or more. You get so many perks. Again, 60% off the American Prospect magazine, access to the Wednesday bonus episodes, access to our little chats, guest suggestions. I'm going to try to book the people you suggest. And on and on and on. Oh, 20% off merch. A piece of free merch if you're a Frantifa member at the higher tiers for 3 months. So hang on for that. And I will see you guys on martes. Thank you so much. Final note. If you haven't already gotten your tickets and you're in the Los Angeles area, come see me. January 22nd at 7:30 in Pasadena at the Ice House. New World Disorder, a night of comedy with me, Ida Rodriguez, Matt Lieb, James Fritz, Chloe Hilliard. It's going to be fire. And we're already going to do a February show. So if you're not around in January, we're going to do a February one. Maybe we'll make it a thing. Hopefully it'll be a thing. With your support, it'll be a thing. And I'll see you Tuesday. Have a great weekend. What a first week. Bye.